Hey guys, how you be? Been about a week or so, and you saw the topic, so you probably have a pretty good idea where we're going with this. I'm going to get there. Before I do, I guess big provisos and a bit of house cleaning. The big proviso being this is, as they typically are, this is, I go without a script, and I am sometimes even more unprepared, like this time. And that's going to be challenging because I'm going to be hitting a couple topics where I want to choose my words carefully. And so if I'm fumbling at various points, I'll be fumbling because what I'm trying to avoid is say something where I have to clarify it later because I really didn't express it well. And when you're going, just burning, there's a greater chance you're going to make that kind of mistake. So I'm going to try hard to, again, if I pause for a moment, I'm trying to gather my words. I want to make sure I say things right, again, so I don't have to apologize later. The house cleaning, I do want to talk a little bit about the moment we're in culturally, where we're very careful about what we say. What I'm just experiencing, right? We're extremely careful about what we say because there are cultural forces that you shouldn't say this and you shouldn't say that, okay. And if you say, no, I want everyone to say everything, okay, then you sound like some right-wing troll who's looking for permission to hate people. I'm not right-wing. I'm very left-wing. But I'm critical of anyone sort of infringing on the greatest level of free speech we can have without it turning into, let's give permission to have Nazis talk. If, right now free speech has been co-opted by absolutely crazy right-wing folks to say, yes, everything has to be on the table in an absolute sense. I'm for free speech right up to that border. Not the border of we say everything, the border of there is an end of free speech. I want there to be barely any, but there is one. And it becomes incitement and it becomes, it becomes Nazism, it becomes fascism. That's a degree of, that's when, that's a cancer and that's a place you can't go. And I just think that's, the people making the absolutist free speech argument are using it as it's really a ploy. I don't think they mean it nearly that much. I think what they're looking for is they're looking for a right. We want the right to hate people. And we want this absolutist approach because that way we can really, it's not a good faith argument. It's an argument patently in bad faith. So it's an argument to make another argument. So I think we can't fall for that. At the same time, if you're trying, and I think people using euphemistic language are trying to soften language to some degree because they're trying not to hurt people. I know that's well-intentioned, and that often comes from the left. And I think it's very well-intentioned. The idea is there's nothing wrong with the idea. I'm not. Let's have more hate speech. No, hardly. But also, there's a balance to be achieved. And if we can't say anything because everything has to be in the particular, then we're not doing ourselves. We're losing the ability to have open conversation, and that's where we get things done. Our chance to get anything done is through conversation. Conversation is the greatest tool we have. Stopping us from talking, saying there are things we can't say, tends to be. Go the other way, in the direction we don't want to go. Now, again, you go too far, you turn into Elon Musk. No. That's not what we want. But you want something, you want a more balanced, something more nuanced. And it requires us to have a baloney detector to realize. Okay, so in the problem with that we're so careful what we have to say comes up with the next observation. Just this week, there have been a ton of people really accused of doing bad things or did bad things and none of it was surprising. And saying that, I kind of saw this coming, can get you in trouble. You are making assumptions. You cannot think that. You must not think that way. A degree of common sense. That's okay. Russell Brand got in trouble this week. Were you really surprised? Brand's no doubt very bright. Also, Brand's undoubtedly very talented. There sometimes is great distance between celebrity and what the person actually is. Actors have faced this. Various actors have said, no, I'm not this person that I'm playing. And they turn out to be vastly different. There's distance there. But there's a kind of celebrity who is not an actor, who is essentially playing themselves, where they've become a character. There may be some distance there, but very often there's much less distance there. I would tend to think Brand would be in that latter category. Yes, Brand puts on a persona on stage. Of course he does. But is it that different from who Russell Brand turns out to be? And it's probably part of his strength as a performer is what you see is what you get. He's real, right? And sometimes really not such a great human. I have no idea if these accusations against him are true, but they didn't come to me as a surprise. And I think saying that doesn't make you a terrible, jaded person who's making tremendous assumptions about no, I don't. You've been programmed by the media. Okay, I'll grant you that the media is a terrible lens to, make final, appraisals of anything. I grant you that. But when you get media stories from every kind of media, far-right media, far-left media, in-between media, everybody's media is essentially telling you the same thing about a particular person, there's a greater chance there's probably some truth to that. I don't buy what I'm getting told by the media is, it's in print, it must be true. Of course not, right? But over a period of time, and just my own observations, I'm not shocked by Russell Brand. I'm not. Drew Barrymore turned out to be a creep because if she could have gotten away with it, this is a person who's lived in privilege, and it came across that way. Everyone likes that she's down to earth. Yeah, if she could have gotten away with crossing picket lines, if she could have, she would have. She could have charmed her way into that, she would have done it. And she tried to apologize, and that looked terrible. I get the feeling and she didn't seem to know, a bit tone deaf. I wonder if she's all that bright. Savvy, perhaps. Bright, maybe not. So, am I shocked that she might not be a great human being? No. I'm not surprised. Because she comes across as phony. I haven't bought her act in a long time. Jan Wenner's an awful human being. Okay. Maybe for Jan Wenner, the founder of Rolling Stone and all this stuff. In a previous life, when I was living in the city and I needed to, I was taking jazz gigs. I mean, it was hard to survive. I had day gigs. Virtually all of us have had day gigs at one point. All of us musical people sometimes have had to have day gigs. And I had day gigs. And I was in the telecommunication industry, which I fell into, had no intention to do that, and was in sales. And I was assigned an account, and it was Rolling Stone. And so I was trying to hook up Rolling Stone, whatever they needed, and take care of the account. And it turned out Rolling Stone, every time you had a conversation with them, they were deathly afraid of Jan Wenner. Jan wouldn't like this, and Jan only does it that way. And you can only do it this way because Jan insists that it must be okay. Everything was difficult. And you got a feeling that, again, the people that worked there were absolutely scared to death of Jan Wenner because Jan Wenner, by all indication, was an absolute monster, an awful person to work with. And you could never talk to Jan Wenner. You could only talk to people around because the self-importance factor was so high and all that. But the people that worked around, you got the feeling were protecting this thing. But it reminded you of Weinstein or something. It was obvious that this guy was impossible. And they were just trying to keep it from getting too impossible. I was not shocked that Jan Wenner would say awful things about, he founded Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and then that was behaving backwards for years and years and years and years. And he was the driving force. It doesn't take, you can make that conclusion. One more. Bob Menendez. Senator Menendez, yeah, got indicted again. The last time he got off somehow. I'm leaning to the left, right? I'm an independent, but I lean left. Look, the Democrats, it shouldn't be tough for the Democrats. The governor of New Jersey got it, said he should go. He should go. The problem, I think, is, on some level, Chuck Schumer, well, we have to wait, and I don't know, and, Chuck's amazing. But the idea that unless it's, everyone's innocent until proven guilty, well, that's correct. That's a legal standard. I agree with the legal standard, and you abide by the legal standard. But the rest of us, in our day-to-day lives, do not have to apply the legal standard. We can see that and say, oh, he's a crook, because he's a crook. That shouldn't be too difficult for us. And that shouldn't be something we can't say. And yeah, we should demand his ouster. And so should Chuck Schumer. I don't care how long he's known him. Part of the gig, part of having that kind of power is not you get extra breaks, but the standard should be higher. The standard needs to be higher for him. And the standard needs to be higher for the Democrats. And they should call for him to be out. And it should have been immediate. It shouldn't take 2 or 3 days. It shouldn't take a week. And it shouldn't take time. That should be the difference between them and other parties, which always protect their own, right? You should very quickly, this should be done, just because it's right. He should be prosecuted, and then they'll find him guilty, and he should go straight to freaking jail. Great. That's good. That's what should happen. That's not a problem. Yeah, if you're guilty and you commit a crime, you go to jail. And that would be the same for Trump, and that would be the same for Bob Menendez, and that'd be, because it should be the same. That's what people... Now, there are Democrats who are Kool-Aid drinkers and will just say, our people are perfect people, and I know people who believe that. And I think they're scary. And of course, there's the same on the Republican side. Politicians are not these perfect people. And they're not heroes. And you shouldn't hero worship them. I don't care who they are. That's not, they're people. They're not these things, these idealized, they're not. And Menendez, not a great guy, and we should be able to do it. And it shouldn't even take time to think about it. If we really believe in the stuff, then we really believe in the stuff. And standards are the standards. Period. And there's no breaks for anybody. Not breaks for my guys, and not breaks for their no breaks. Look, Hunter Biden's story is not a story, but at the same time, Hunter Biden is a very troubled guy. A lot of problems. A lot of problems. But again, it's not a big story. I remember Neil Bush and Billy Carter and Roger Clinton. There's been a lot of family, Trump's whole family. I mean, a whole bunch of family of presidents that have had major issues and done some marginally illegal things. And it's kind of embarrassing. And yeah, it's bad. And okay, they shouldn't get a break. They should be targeted more, but they shouldn't get a break. So that's, all of that is sort of going on. Wow, I spent a lot of time doing the house cleaning. Let's move on. What I really came to talk about today is, we've just passed the equinox. We're in the fall. We're really in the fall. And I'm looking out my window here as the sun goes down earlier in the evening, and the trees are a good quarter of the way turned now, and it's gray and it's cooler and it's all of that. And I start listening to Miles Davis. Specifically, I start listening to Miles Davis in the 50s. I do a lot of listening to that version of Miles. I think it's my favorite period of all that. And I listen to the small group a lot. The Train, Red Garland, Paul Chambers, group, Philly Joe Jones. Love that. It's in many ways still the template to me on what that music either can or should sound like. And I love although I'm not a huge big band guy, I do love the big band records with the Gil Evans Orchestra. I have a weird connection to that. One of my teachers at Berkeley was a guy named Lou Mucci. And Lou Mucci was one of the trumpet players in Gil Evans' band. He knew Gil going back to the Claude Thornhill Orchestra, which was a World War II-ish, just after World War II band, one of Gil Evans' first gigs being an arranger. A lot of the members of that band, I think Jerry Mulligan was in that band, a lot of people were in that band, Lee Konitz was in that band. A lot of those guys end up doing the 9-piece group, the Birth of the Cool sessions. So, and later when the big band happened, my teacher Lou was NBC Orchestra. He was a top trumpet player, and he got a lot of great gigs. And him and Gil remained tight, and they remained friends. He was often at the famous Gil Evans apartment. He knew all those cats, and he did those recording sessions, and he talked about it. And when I realized he was on those records, I asked him about it, and he was like, Mr. Pancho. He was always Mr. Pancho. And he was a dream, tiny little wizened little man. He was wonderful. I was so lucky to bump into him. One of the best people. And I was like, you've got to tell me about those sessions. And he did. One of the things he told me was how the studio guys at the time, when they first weren't sure that this was going to be, they didn't have a lot of respect for Miles as a trumpet player. And then after they started recording, they were talking amongst themselves, and I think it was Bernie Glow, perhaps the lead trumpet player, who was saying to the other guys, you know what, if I'm being fair, he can't come in here and play the parts we're playing. And we can't do and we wouldn't choose to do what he's doing. We wouldn't take the risks, the chances. We wouldn't have the ideas. A fundamental sense that we do what we do, but he has to be given some respect for a degree of artistry that it wasn't their job to do. They were guys playing parts and knocking them dead. Good, professional, solid musicians, absolutely. But they had great respect for someone who could go to some other place. And it was a personal vision and an art, again, creating art as opposed to being sort of mechanic and playing your parts perfectly. And every time I listen to Miles, I really do have the question. I actually I remember speaking to a bass player many years ago, Mr. Formanek, I believe, in New York City. And we were talking about Miles, great bass player. And we were talking about Miles. And he said then, this was in the 90s, that Miles couldn't get a gig today. And it really amazed me that is true. I don't think someone doing those, not saying that today you would go and play do Miles's music the way Miles did it, that would be, don't get me wrong, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is someone doing what Miles was doing, especially if you listen to those big band records, you get closer to Sketches of Spain. Was that even jazz anymore? And in that period of time, that was kind of radical stuff to do. Miles wasn't just running lines and playing bebop anymore. And he was doing this, it was much more sparse. And I think it connected with people. And it was much more graceful. He wasn't hitting people over the head with chops. And people said, well, he didn't hit him over the head with chops because he didn't have the chops. On some level, that's true. On some level, that's true. He wasn't an amazing, machine on the instrument. But good God, the feeling that came across, and again, that's the artistry. Wow, there's very few people who've done anything like that. And he took these chances and stretched the music. And I don't hear in the current jazz, I don't think is stretching anything. Current jazz seems very intent on, all right, everything's been done, and we're going to stay within the box. virtually every voicing, virtually every approach. And those albums that Miles was doing at that time, especially those, like I say, those big had a bit of crossover. People outside of jazz could listen to that and did listen to that. And it's a reason why Columbia said, hey, we're onto something here. Let's do another one of these. And that's why, they kept doing them. Because a wider audience was checking that out. Current jazz is given up on any kind of wider audience, I think. They're only playing for each other within very established lines. And there are guys killing it. The playing has never been better. It's amazing. But I also think the playing touches fewer people. And I don't think it's even trying to touch anybody, but it's all being, jazz is playing, they're playing for each other. And they're all comparing notes about who was, it's become such an intellectual exercise. And look, I love intellectual exercises, right? But it's become the ideal, I think, is to somehow become, I'm an associate professor at Lower Slobovia High School, Lower Slobovia Community College. That the only thing that you would want to do is that the great players, have their great goal is to have an adjunct position at a small college where they can hold court, I suppose, and go and do these tours, and they sound great, but so few people are really touched by it. And again, with extraordinary as the playing is, there's nothing about it where you're stretching any sort of boundaries. There's so little of that. And I know there are guys who will, there's the jazz scene, there are jazz people, again, these folks particularly, who will go after anybody. Boy, that really pisses them off. And, but Chick Corea wasn't afraid to take chances and expand the boundaries. And Keith Jarrett wasn't afraid to do that. They kept pushing these guys. Some of these guys kept pushing. And, Miles didn't stay still and kept pushing and trying to go. So, you can't, if your argument against what I'm saying is, oh, you're just arguing for it's music of your time, so, you think it's the best because it's music of your time. I'm sorry. If it was the music of my time, I'd be arguing about, gee, everyone ought to be listening to Fleetwood Mac or something. I grew up in the 70s and in the 80s. Yes. So, Miles I'm talking happened way before I was born. Right? So, but it could still touch you and it could still be great. But I'm not saying people should be doing music like those records. I'm saying people should be taking chances, or that there should be room for something other than, I played through Moment's Notice perfectly. I played through Giant Steps Through the Keys. Can someone just play something original, perhaps, that will latch onto an audience, not just something original, something where people will hear it and go, oh, what an incredible melody that they'll hold on to, and do something sparse and graceful and have some space. I think, honestly, I think there's a place for it, because everything comes full circle eventually, right? But I'm a trumpet player and I've played jazz and loved it so much. And it's sad to me that the music I love and gave myself to essentially is something I don't want to be a part of anymore. And I know that what it's become is, I'm not even that crazy about it. There's some great people out there. There are people doing some really cool stuff. So I want to be careful. But in the main, the direction of it is, it's all become about, I don't know, it's a very narrow-minded, insular we're not interested in playing for anybody, but look how, people playing these unbelievable things. But yes, of course, I would never play that out. I would, because it's always, they're almost destroyed by their own humility in that sense. I guess because all of those, every voicing and everything is all learnable. But after you learn all that, you do have to create something. And I don't see that. I don't see the interesting original stuff. And I think if someone could do it, but I don't know if the culture is too asleep at the switch. Would it even realize if Miles was around, someone like Miles, maybe it's a better way to put it, somebody coming around doing something as interesting and sparse and gorgeous and so forth as what Miles did in those days, would it even find a place? Because this crowd surrounding jazz certainly wouldn't know what to make of it and might hate them for doing it, I suspect. So it's a reason, some of the people I like, I listen, I'm always trying to find new stuff. And sometimes I hear some really cool stuff. But Hani Irani is a piano player from Poland who does these piano improvisations. Is it classical music? I don't know what the hell it is. But that's what's great. I can't pigeonhole it. And it's really, really cool. Oliver Arnolds, the composer from, I believe he's Icelandic originally, was one half of the electronic group Kiasmos, and does soundtracks and does his own things. Really, really smart, sparse, interesting, bright stuff. Nils Fromm and guys like that. I'm much more interested in what those people are doing. And I have a feeling that's where I'm going in my life. Because I don't think I don't think great artists say, oh yes, I must stay right within the box. I must tick off all the boxes to get the approval of the others at the symposium. Yes, Harumph. And I must go to the conference. And I won't have an opinion that's too strong because we must all, yes. I don't want, it's not what I'm interested in doing. I want to do interesting music and I want to do something that's bold. And I'm not trying to please a cognoscenti. And I worry about those. They play great, but man, it leaves me cold. It just does. So I'm at this point, I've never been more done with genre, I suppose. I'm just gonna, wherever I hear good stuff, that's where I'm going. And I really do think it's possible that a guy like Miles just couldn't get a gig today. That there would be no place for that. That would be, in fact, it would never get a chance. Would never get a chance because, it doesn't play perfectly. And we're missing it. And the general culture outside of the jazz world, I don't know that that scene is incredibly, to say they're not well read is, they're being sold a lot of pop music that's regurgitation of pop music from 10 years and 20 years and 30 years before, and they don't have the wherewithal to realize that they're just doing the same thing all over again. Wow. Just not a good sense of history or art history or the nature of trends. I'll tell you something I'm going to go do. Next, I think it started this weekend. It's going to go on for a while. There's going to be a Manet Degas exhibit at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So you can go see, 19th century Parisian girls who are very depressed and filled with a sense of ennui. And you know what? It's great stuff to go and figure out what they were doing, what they were saying, and how they were commenting on their contemporary scene. That stuff is good for you, man. And I feel bad for if younger people have no sense of, you want to be a better musician. Besides all your musical stuff, go to an art show. Go see some art. And don't do it just to the movies. Go find some good cinema. Go find some of that underground cinema. See what's going on. Dive deep into stuff outside of your world. Read something that you haven't read before. But get some of this other stuff in you, and it'll fill you up, and it'll inform you and give you ideas, so you can go do something that doesn't sound like so you're doing something where you're not ticking off the boxes, where hopefully you forget about the freaking boxes. Miles wasn't, it's always very famous. Miles wasn't playing for the people. He would turn his back. All that. Yeah, that's true. But Miles was trying to create gorgeous stuff that said something bigger. In that sense, he was not a showbiz performer in any sense, but he was interested in creating something that had something to say. And his bands did. Herbie did, and Wayne Shorter certainly did. Everyone's, people talk so much about Wayne these days because Wayne just passed, and that, right? And Wayne's one of my favorite people, but boy, what a unique voice. When we love the great ones, they didn't sound like anybody else. Train sounds like Train. Monk sounds like Monk. Miles sounds like Miles. That's good. And I don't hear can you really tell the difference between some of the top tenor players right now? I can't. And I respect them like mad because they're incredible players. I'd mention a couple, but I'll get all sorts of people peeved. But I'll mention them. I usually can't tell that much difference between Chris Potter, who's an insanely good musician, but I can't always tell the difference between Chris and, say, Chad Leftwich-Brown, an unbelievable player. But I don't get the individuality. I don't get the artistry. When you're ticking off all the boxes, it's the opposite of looking for artistry. It's intentionally getting everything in there perfectly. It's amazing, right? But that's a different kind of playing than someone who may not have all of the technique, but has more message. There needs to be a blend, but when it all becomes just totally pedantic, it can't be the answer. It just can't. So, speaking for myself, the more and more time goes by, I'm sitting there going, at my stage in life, what do I want to do? I'm not interested in trying to please a group of people that can't be pleased. We got to be better than that. Now's a great time. If you're ever going to go for yourself, instead of going for a particular accolade or a particular kind of popularity, if you're ever going to just go for yourself, trust me, where I am in life, it's a great time to be going for yourself. Split from the whole scene. Do you. And great artists did. And it should be a wonderful example for us as to what we should be doing. So that's what I've got for you. I'm not sure Miles can get a gig. I'm not sure if people, younger crowd, listen to Sketches of Spain, say, or a Miles Ahead, that there would even be a comprehension that would be so beyond the idea of that kind of restraint and grace. My God, but man, do we need it. Man, do we need it. In this hyper-computerized, we need poetry. We need that. And we need that instinct. And we need grace. We need that. So, speaking for myself, that's the sort of stuff I'm going to work on to my own lights and my own way of seeing things. And it'll probably go nowhere because it's the nature of it. But it's not going to stop me from making it. And hopefully, I would think making it quite passionately. And then, but the world won't. But that's okay. I'm not doing it to get you can't do it because you're trying to get, you can't, that's, if you're a commercial musician, well, that's something else. You have commercial interests in mine, and I have a commercial hat that I put on, and it's fine. It's a whole other thing. But when you're really doing it, and you're doing it for yourself, and you're doing the stuff that really matters, you can't be worried about, I've got to fit into this, or I've got to fit. Okay, that's what I've got for you guys. I will talk to you. Hopefully, I will be back in a week. That this won't take long before I'll do another one. I'm in the middle of busy days here. Trying to get my kid into college, and I've got it's a very very busy fall. So I'll keep working on it. But I will talk to you all hopefully in a week. If you have, give me a like, give me some feedback. You could feel free. If you may disagree with me violently, trust me, I have no problem with that, and I'm open to hearing other perspectives, very much so. I think Dave's terribly wrong on it. That's totally fine. Maybe you're right. Okay, so I'm not interested in getting a fight. I'm not going to argue with anybody. This is just a personal perspective, and it's the way I'm seeing things. But feel free, get in touch, and we can throw some ideas back and forth. Certainly. All right. Talk to you guys soon. Take care.